We'll now switch to the side of the Atlantic and talk about heating equipment in Europe. Therefore, we set up a top-class podium, which is going to discuss current developments of heating technology. The moderator of the discussion will be Guido Zähnen. He's technical advisor at Informasud, the Belgian Information Center for Royal Heating, and he's now going to introduce the panelists.
Okay, thank you, Florian, and welcome everybody on this side of the Atlantic and also on the other side of the Atlantic. I hope that everybody can hear us loud and clear without any problems. I will shortly introduce the members of the panelists of the panel. I start first with Federica Sabati, who is the Secretary General of the European Heating Industry. The European EHI is the federation that brings together all the companies that are leaders in the production of efficient heating systems in Europe, and they cover about 90% of the market in Europe. It's not only boilers, but it's also solar thermal systems, it's heat pumps to fuel cells, and also all of the innovations that are going on now in the heating system. Federica holds a university degree in international relations from the University of Trieste and has also a master in Russian and post-Soviet studies. Federica is going to give us an idea of how the system of restrictive code bodies and how the European standards are evolving, and how this is really also has a big influence on our business in Europe, and also maybe this is interesting, I think, across the other side of the Atlantic. So Federica, the floor is for you.
So thanks for inviting me. Indeed, as you mentioned at the beginning, I've been asked to give a little bit of a perspective of the framework in which all of the manufacturers that are represented here are operating in Europe mainly. And specifically look at the European framework and legislation that impacts the development of our technologies in the European market going forward. And I will also then briefly talk about that, and then briefly talk about how we as industry see, broadly speaking, the development of the heating technologies within the next years. Just a couple of words. You've already mentioned a bit who we are, but I had a first slide where you have a little bit of an overview of what the European heating industry looks like. We are an industry association active in Europe. We have as membership mainly manufacturers of heating systems. I'm saying systems because it's not just the generators of heat, but it's also companies that are in this efficiency and of this whole system. So, for example, companies that do components for heating systems, that do thermostat system integrators, including then in the end the what we call the heat emitters. So. Producers of radiators, underfloor heating and cooling. So we really try to cover the whole of the heating system, both the residential, but also large appliances, commercial and industrial. We'll today focus more on what is residential rather than the other bigger appliances, which we cover, and many of our members, also the ones present today, cover. It's a big industry. It's a European industry, has it's inscribed very much in a local economy in Europe. It's very European and local supply chain, which we estimate to 1.8 million people employed in the value chain. So quite a relevant economic player. I will try to do my next slide. I don't know how to do that. Maybe somebody can help me. Yes, next. Voila. First, on the framework in which we are moving. I know that in the past seminars there has been of this series has been discussed already the bigger challenge and opportunity and the big discussions that is going on at the moment in Europe, which is now under the heading of the European Green Deal. So the heating sector is heavily impacted, if you want, by the European Green Deal. At the same time, we are also one of the key sectors to provide solutions for the Green Deal, which otherwise remains just a lot of words, particularly obviously for the building sector. You've heard that the European Commission has promised, engaged itself not only within, to fulfill the Paris Agreement standards, but also to really make Europe the first climate neutral continent and economy. This is, of course, comes with a lot of challenges for a lot of sectors, both from the supply chain of, let's say, the energy supply, but also from, let's say, the whole chain down to the technologies that then use that energy. And let's say the legislation, I think, has been mentioned before, ranges from both the legislation which is horizontal, meaning that touches on a lot of different technologies, and typically this is the Renewable Energies Directive, the Energy Efficiency Directive, or the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. So in Europe, we really try to regulate the whole sectors in looking at the renewable content, the efficiency, and let's say the performance from the energy point of view. But we also have legislation that has a specific focus on technologies, which is more product specific, is more vertical. And I will have a little focus on this in the next slide. It's important to understand why there's an increased focus on the heating sector and the building sector in general, because the numbers drive the European Commission towards it, drive us towards it. Buildings represent about almost half of the energy consumption in Europe. And if you look within a building, about 80% to 85% of the energy consumption comes from heating, both space heating and hot water production. So that's a large consumer of energy as a sector, and at the same time it's a sector. Let's say the buildings in Europe are tendentially quite old. They were built before energy performance codes were introduced, or they were different from what we have today. So we have a lot of inefficiency in buildings, and we have a lot of inefficient appliances that work with fossil fuels that are installed in European buildings, and therefore one of the challenges is that they are replaced slowly. So the challenge is indeed a challenge, but it's also an opportunity, particularly for us, because we do provide the technological solutions for it. And the next slide shows, if I can show it, voila. Specific, nope, I have to go one back. Excuse me. Voila. This much at the back. Sorry, it's a technical issue here. Can somebody help me going back to my number 3 slide? One
second, I'll help you.
Yeah, thank you. What I wanted to show is number 3. What I wanted to show is a specific proposal that is being discussed at the moment that focuses on the heating appliances, and that's a legislation that is really product related and has a direct impact on the standards of our technologies, of heating technologies that are placed on the market in Europe. This is called eco-design and energy label. Eco-design is a policy, I think most of you know it, that sets minimum standards of efficiency for placing on the market of heating technologies, and then the energy label, which gives, let's say, an energy class, and as you can see, it's the on the right hand side, the color-coded energy scale that is applied to new products put on the market. These two regulations, which are valid for the whole of Europe, are being revised at the moment. And what you see at the moment in this slide is a table worked out by a consultant of the Commission, who's preparing the revision. Why is this interesting for the future? Because we really see that the trend for these technologies, according to the legislator, is really to make what we place on the market ready for 2030, 2050 climate neutrality, which means that technologies that work with electricity are being pushed up, let's say, on the scale, given a better energy class position. Hybrids are also, hybrid heat pumps particularly, are also brought into the scale, which were not before, and they're placed in the classes between A+ to B, which is sort of a good position. The condensing boiler technology is been put in class C or D. They are currently in class A. And there's an introduction of, let's say, a bonus for appliances working with hydrogen, or potentially working with hydrogen and green gases, let's say, from where they are, so they will give them a 20% bonus. This is not yet approved legislation, but shows, I think, and this is why I wanted to highlight, it shows really the direction that we are going in Europe, which means it's certainly higher energy efficiency, but energy efficiency alone is not going to be enough for the legislator to reach the 2050 targets. Therefore, a strong push towards the decarbonization of the energy sources is not only necessary, but is pushed, and it's been, a proposal has been put forward to give a premium to those technologies that work with such fuels. This proposal is still being discussed, and the process is going to be long, and we're expected to finish with a Commission proposal next year, not before. So it's not necessarily how it's going to look like, but it's certainly a direction that puts us in a framework. If we go to the next slide, somebody can help me. I'm making a mess otherwise. I wanted to show the discussion that we are having in our industry has led on the future roadmap to 2050, has led to us taking a position on a roadmap, a vision, let's say, between 2030 and 2050. We put 2030 because it's important for us to stress that there's an intermediate step, and before, if we don't get to that one, we won't get to the 2050 one. For us, reaching 2050 climate neutrality for buildings will mean working with a lot of different technologies. There's a trend in Europe, which is a trend towards electrification, and certainly there's a lot of actors that's called for electrification of the heating sector only, meaning electrification only of the heating sector. We don't think that electrification only will deliver it, but there's going to be a mix of technologies, a mix of renewable and decarbonized energy sources. What we say, however, and this is the biggest challenge today, is the first step that will bring us to 2030 is indeed to increase energy efficiency of the heating stock, which I was mentioning before, being very inefficient and old. And therefore, the first challenge is really to modernize and to accelerate the step of modernizing old heating systems, which are installed in Europe's homes, which are largely in class, maybe if they had a label, they would be in class C, D or lower. So it's quite inefficient. Obviously, technology has and innovation has progressed in the meantime, so we are really in a different step. Next slide. I have, on the left side, you can see that the pie chart indicates the installed stock in Europe, EU 26, so it's without the UK. In 2017, it's largely, as you can see from the red part, is largely inefficient. It's composed of gas non-condensing and oil non-condensing appliances. the gas condensing and oil condensing, and to say all the green part, heat pumps and biomass, which would fall in energy classes which are higher, so high efficiency, is certainly smaller. It's growing, but it's growing too slowly. It's a 4% increase per year, which still means it would take us about more than 20 years to replace all of that, say, red part of the chart. The technologies exist for replacing the old and inefficient stock. There are several, and some were mentioned before, from condensing technology, hybrid technologies, which combines, we'll see it in a second, the two different technologies, biomass, solar thermal, indeed, heat pumps, electric heat pumps, gas heat pumps, micro CHP, micro combined heat and power, fuel cells. We also offer, of course, water storage, and of course the latest development, which is set to push also consumers to become more prosumers, is the whole discussion on digitalization.
Okay.
Next slide and final slide.
Okay.
Is a reference to hybrid systems, which I think are interesting because they can work both with gas and with oil. Is something that we think is very interesting, and it's now taking place more and more in a couple of markets like Italy or the Netherlands. Hybrid heat pumps, hybrids basically combine two different energy sources. Mm-hmm. And they are particularly interesting for the renovation market, which is really the bigger challenge.